The moment I stepped into that dimly lit hallway, I knew something was wrong. My heart pounded in my chest, an uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. The air felt heavy, thick with a silence that held secrets I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. I clutched my phone tighter, my husband's last words echoing in my mind. Whatever happens, don't let it change you, and whatever you see stays between us. I had laughed it off then, thinking he was just being overprotective. But now, standing in the doorway of our home, the weight of his warning pressed down on me. The lights flickered slightly, casting eerie shadows along the walls. I swallowed hard, stepping forward, my fingers trembling as I reached for the light switch. A part of me didn't want to turn it on, maybe because deep down I already knew whatever had happened here, whatever truth was waiting for me in the darkness, would change everything. The living room looked the same at first glance. The couch, the coffee table, even the faint scent of the vanilla candle I had lit before leaving. But then my eyes landed on something that didn't belong. A single object, small but out of place, lying right there on the floor. I took a shaky breath and knelt down, my fingers grazing the cold surface. My heart sank. Footsteps sounded behind me. Slow, deliberate. I froze. A voice, low and unfamiliar, cut through the silence. You weren't supposed to see that. I turned around, my pulse roaring in my ears. And in that moment, I realized whatever had just happened, it was only the beginning. My breath hitched as I slowly lifted my head. A tall figure stood in the dim glow of the hallway, his shadow stretching across the floor. My pulse pounded in my ears as I struggled to find my voice. Who, who are you? I whispered, my fingers tightening around the object in my hand. It was smooth, cold, unfamiliar, but I didn't dare look down at it again. Not yet. The man didn't answer. He took a step closer, and instinctively, I shuffled back, my knees nearly giving out beneath me. The weight of the silence was unbearable, pressing against my chest, making it harder to breathe. Then, just as I opened my mouth to scream, the front door creaked open. My husband's voice cut through the tension. "What's going on?" Relief flooded me, but only for a second. Because the moment my husband stepped inside, his eyes locked onto the man in the hallway, and I saw something I never expected: recognition. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't afraid. He knew him. The man exhaled slowly, stepping back into the shadows. My husband dropped his keys on the table, his jaw tightening as he looked at me, then at the object still clutched in my hand. I glanced down, finally taking in what I had picked up. It was a ring, a simple silver band, but definitely not mine. I looked up at my husband, searching his face for answers. "What's happening?" My voice was barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to the man and nodded slightly. Without a word, the man slipped out the front door, vanishing into the night. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving only an unsettling silence in his wake. My husband ran a hand over his face, his shoulders tense. "You weren't supposed to come home yet?" A chill ran through me. "What do you mean? Who was that? And why did he say I wasn't supposed to see?" His gaze snapped to mine, sharp and unreadable. "I told you, some things are better left alone." I shook my head, my grip tightening around the ring. "Number not this time. You need to tell me the truth." For the first time since I'd met him, my husband looked uneasy. His jaw clenched, and he turned away, pacing the room like he was trying to figure out what to say. Then he stopped, his back still to me. "If I tell you, you can't ever repeat it to anyone." I swallowed hard. "Why?" He exhaled. "Because it'll change everything." I stared at my husband, my fingers still wrapped around the silver ring. The weight of his words settled in my chest like a heavy stone. What do you mean? My voice was barely above a whisper. What will change? He turned slowly, his eyes dark with something I couldn't read. Fear, guilt. I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. He was holding something back. He let out a slow breath. I told you not to ask. Frustration bubbled up inside me. And I told you I need to know. I took a step closer. Who was that man? Why was he in our house? And whose ring is this? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the door as if expecting someone else to walk in. Then, finally, he looked back at me. It's not what you think. I let out a shaky laugh, disbelief washing over me. Then explain it to me, because right now, it looks exactly like something I should be worried about. He ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders tense. That man, he's someone I owe. His voice was careful, measured, like he was choosing each word with precision. And the ring, it's part of that. I frowned, confusion swirling in my mind. Part of what? He hesitated, then sighed. A deal. My stomach dropped. What kind of deal? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. My heart pounded as my mind raced with possibilities. Was it money? Something illegal? Something worse? Then a thought hit me, a terrifying thought. Is he dangerous? My voice was barely above a whisper. My husband's jaw tightened. I'm handling it. That wasn't an answer, not really. I stepped back, shaking my head. You're hiding something, and if you can't tell me the truth, I don't know how I'm supposed to trust you. His expression flickered, like my words had struck something deep. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, as if struggling with a decision. Then, just as I thought he might finally tell me, his phone buzzed. He glanced down at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. I didn't have to ask. I already knew. Whoever was on the other end of that call was the reason I wasn't supposed to come home tonight. My husband stared at his phone, his fingers tightening around it, as if the screen held something he wasn't ready to face. I waited, my breath caught in my throat, but he didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, frozen. I stepped forward. Who is it? He didn't answer. A cold dread crept over me. Whatever was happening, whatever secret he had been keeping, it was unraveling right in front of us. And yet, he was still trying to protect me from it. His phone buzzed again, the sound cutting through the thick silence. Finally, he exhaled and pressed the screen to decline the call. That's it? My voice trembled with frustration. You're just going to ignore it? He looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't just fear. It was something deeper. I need you to listen to me. His voice was low, urgent. You can't ask any more questions. Not now. I shook my head. Number? That's not good enough. You said this would change everything. So tell me what I need to know. He took a step closer, lowering his voice as if someone might be listening. You weren't supposed to come home yet because tonight was my only chance to fix this. My heart pounded. Fix what? His phone buzzed again. This time, a message lit up the screen. I didn't mean to look, but I caught a glimpse of the words, and they sent a chill straight through me. You had your chance. Now it's too late. I felt the blood drain from my face. Who sent that? His expression darkened, and he immediately swiped the message away. It doesn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than anything. Something heavy settled in my chest. You made a deal with someone dangerous, didn't you? He didn't deny it. A sudden noise outside made us both tense. A car door slamming, footsteps on the pavement. My husband grabbed my wrist. We don't have much time. I barely had a chance to process his words before the front door handle turned. Someone was here, and they weren't going to knock. The doorknob twisted slowly, and my breath caught in my throat. My husband's grip on my wrist tightened as he pulled me behind him, his body tense like he was bracing for something. Then the door creaked open. A rush of cold air swept into the house, but the person standing in the doorway wasn't who I expected. It was a woman. She was tall, dressed in dark clothing, her face partially hidden in the dim light. Her gaze flickered past my husband and landed on me. For a split second, something unreadable passed over her face. Recognition, hesitation, maybe even regret. But then her expression hardened. "You should have listened to him," she said quietly, her voice calm in a way that made my stomach twist. "You weren't supposed to be here tonight." My pulse pounded. "Who are you?" She ignored my question and turned her attention back to my husband. "You didn't fix it." Her tone wasn't angry, just disappointed, like she had expected this outcome all along. He swallowed hard. "I just need more time." She shook her head. That's not how this works." I stepped forward, my voice shaking. "Someone tell me what's going on, right now." The woman's eyes met mine, and something about the way she looked at me sent a chill down my spine. "You really don't know, do you?" I glanced at my husband, expecting him to say something, to finally tell me the truth. But he remained silent. The woman sighed, then reached into her pocket. I flinched, but she only pulled out a small folded piece of paper. Without a word, she extended it toward me. I hesitated before taking it, my hands trembling as I unfolded it. The second I saw what was inside, my entire body went cold. It was a picture, a grainy, slightly blurred photograph. But there was no mistaking the people in it. It was me and my husband. But the date printed on the bottom wasn't from today or yesterday. It was from 6 months ago, and we weren't alone. There was another man in the picture, the same man who had been in our house earlier tonight, the man my husband claimed he owed. A wave of nausea washed over me. "What is this?" I whispered. The woman's expression softened, just slightly. "It's proof." "Proof of what?" She exhaled slowly, like she was about to say something that would change everything. "That your husband hasn't been telling you the truth." I turned to him, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. The woman continued. "You don't remember that night, do you?" I frowned, my mind racing. "What are you talking about?" She took a step closer. "The deal he made? It wasn't just about him. It was about you." My breath caught, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized I might have been part of it all along, without even knowing. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. My fingers gripped the photograph so tightly that the edges crumpled, but I couldn't look away. 6 months ago, the same man, a night I had no memory of. I turned to my husband, my voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me she's lying." He finally met my eyes, and in that moment, I knew. He wasn't going to deny it, because he couldn't. "I was trying to protect you," he said quietly. I let out a shaky breath, my mind spinning. "Protect me from what?" His gaze flickered to the woman, then back to me. That night, something happened, something I couldn't undo. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Then tell me." He swallowed hard. "You were there, but you don't remember because I made sure you wouldn't." The words sent a chill through me. "What does that mean?" The woman spoke before he could. "It means he made a deal to erase it, to make sure you never found out." I shook my head. "That's not possible. You can't just erase someone's memory." But the look on my husband's face told me otherwise. "I didn't want you to live with it," he said, his voice strained. "I thought it was better if you never knew." Tears burned my eyes. "Knew what?" His jaw tightened. "That the man you saw tonight, He wasn't here to hurt you. He hesitated, then said the words that made my entire body freeze. He was here to see if you remembered him? My heart nearly stopped. The woman sighed, crossing her arms. And now that you've seen this photo, there's no turning back. I tried to breathe, to make sense of it all. A night wiped from my memory. A man connected to both of us. A deal I had never agreed to, but had somehow been a part of. And now? I wasn't sure if I wanted to remember. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced them back. What happens now? The woman glanced at my husband, then back at me. That depends. Do you want to know the truth? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I thought I did. I thought I needed to know everything. But now, standing here, with my husband looking at me like he had already lost me, I wasn't sure anymore. Because once I knew, I could never unknow it. I looked down at the photograph one last time, then slowly folded it and handed it back to her. My voice was steady when I finally spoke. Number some things should stay buried. The woman nodded, as if she had expected that answer. She turned and walked out the door. My husband let out a slow breath, his shoulders slumping. I didn't look at him. I wasn't sure if I could, because even though I had chosen not to remember, something told me the past wasn't done with us yet.